It was a warm Saturday afternoon. The sky was clear. The air was calm. People were out enjoying their day in downtown Washington, D.C. At a fancy rooftop restaurant called La Veranda. Everything seemed normal. Soft music played. Waiters moved around. With silver trays, guests sipped drinks and laughed in luxury. But something was about to happen. Something no one would forget. A quiet woman enters. A woman walked into the restaurant quietly. She wore sunglasses, a simple long coat, and her hair tied back. She didn't come with security. No cameras. No bodyguards. She just wanted a peaceful lunch. No one looked at her twice. Not yet. She asked for a small table near the window. Her voice was calm, polite. The hostess smiled and led her to the corner table. Karen arrives loudly 10 minutes. Later, a very different woman entered. She wore bright red lipstick, big sunglasses, and expensive jewelry. Her name was Karen Watson, and she made sure everyone noticed her. Karen didn't just walk in. She marched in. She snapped her fingers at the waiter and complained about the table. "I don't sit in corners," she said loudly. "I'm not some nobody." The manager quickly gave her a better seat, just a few tables away from the quiet woman, and that's when everything started. Karen noticed as Karen sat down and glanced around. She noticed the woman by the window. She stared at her long, hard. The woman was reading a book and smiling to herself, but something about her bothered Karen. Karen leaned toward the waiter. "Excuse me, who is that woman over there?" The waiter shrugged. "I'm not sure, ma'am." Karen raised an eyebrow. "She looks out of place here. Look at her coat. She's probably not even from this area." The insult began. Karen stood up. Yes, she actually walked over to the woman's table, without permission, without greeting, and said, "Hi. I don't know if you realize, but this is a high-end place. You might be more comfortable at one of those fast food spots down the street." The woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were calm. Her face was soft. She didn't respond. Karen smiled, but not kindly. "Don't be shy. I mean, your kind usually loves attention." Some people nearby turned their heads. Waiters froze. The air went cold. Crowd grows uncomfortable. The woman still said nothing. She turned a page in her book. Karen leaned closer. "Are you ignoring me? Do you even speak English?" Now the room was silent. One woman dropped her fork. A man whispered to his wife, "Is that who I think it is?" The waiter returned nervously and said, "Ma'am, please, return to your seat." Karen snapped, "I'm just trying to help her understand where she is. This isn't a public park." Someone stands up then. Someone stood up, a young man at the far end of the restaurant. He stared at Karen with disbelief. "Do you know who you're talking to?" he asked. Karen laughed. "Some woman trying to dress above her level." The man shook his head. "That's not just some woman. That's Michelle Obama." The words hit the room like thunder. Karen blinked. "No way. That's not possible. Michelle Obama doesn't eat alone. She has a team." Another guest pulled out their phone and searched quickly. They turned their screen to Karen. A photo of Michelle Obama, same eyes, same smile. Karen's face turned pale, the moment captured by now. Several people were recording. Phones pointed. At Karen, at Michelle. The woman, Michelle Obama, looked up from her book. She finally spoke. Her voice was soft, calm, powerful. "I came here today for peace. I came here not as a public figure, but just a woman wanting lunch." She closed her book slowly. "But even in silence I was noticed, judged, and insulted." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Michelle stood up. "You didn't see me, you only saw what you chose to see." The manager reacts. The restaurant manager arrived, sweating and nervous. He looked at Michelle, then Karen. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," he said to Michelle. Michelle nodded kindly. "I'll be leaving now," she said. "Not because I was told to, but because I choose peace." She walked past Karen, not with fear, not with anger, but with grace. The entire restaurant stood in silence as she left. What happens next? Karen sat down, still frozen. People whispered. Some glared. Some shook their heads. Her phone buzzed. A message from a friend. "Karen, you're going viral." Karen didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But in just a few hours, the whole world would know her face, her name, her words, and the woman she tried to humiliate. She would again remind the world why she was once called America's most graceful First Lady. The restaurant door closed behind Michelle Obama. She had walked out slowly, with grace. But inside La Veranda, the air was no longer calm. People were still standing. Some whispered. Some stared at Karen, the woman who had just insulted the former First Lady. Karen sat down stiffly. Her hands shook a little, but her face stayed proud. The waiter whispers in the corner. The young waiter Daniel looked shocked. He turned to another server and whispered, "That really was her, Michelle Obama." The other waiter nodded. I recognized her smile, and her voice. That was her, for sure. People at nearby tables overheard the whisper, and like wildfire, the truth began to spread. One person leaned to their friend. "That woman just insulted Michelle Obama." Pulled out their phone. It's already on Twitter. Online within minutes, the video someone had recorded showing Karen yelling, Michelle staying calm, was already posted online. The caption said, "White woman humiliates Michelle Obama in public restaurant." You won't believe how Michelle responds in just 10 minutes. The post had over 20,000 views. People commented things like, "This is heartbreaking. Michelle is still the most graceful person alive. That woman should be ashamed." Inside the restaurant, Karen had no idea what was happening, yet. Manager confronts Karen. The restaurant manager approached her table carefully. He wasn't smiling anymore. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Karen looked up, confused. "Me? Why?" "Because you just insulted a national icon." In public, Karen scoffed. "I didn't know who she was. I thought she was someone pretending." The manager shook his head. "You didn't need to know her name. You just needed to treat her with respect." Karen's denial. Karen stood up, trying to control her voice. "This is ridiculous. I didn't say anything that bad. Everyone's so sensitive these days." A woman at the next table spoke quietly. "You told her to eat at a place because of her coat." Another man added, "You said people like her didn't belong here." Karen spun around. "I didn't mean it like that." But no one looked convinced. The crowd turned. Someone at the bar shouted, "You embarrassed her in front of all of us. You embarrassed yourself." Karen's face turned red. She grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. On her way out, a teen girl filming her said softly, "You're going viral, Karen." Karen paused. "What does that mean?" The girl just smiled and said, "You'll find out." News picks it up within 1 hour. Multiple media outlets had reposted the video. Former First Lady harassed at D.C. restaurant. Michelle Obama walks out with grace after public humiliation. Who is the woman in red who disrespected Michelle Obama? People online were furious. Celebrities began reposting the video, calling out the behavior. Karen's face was everywhere. Back at Karen's apartment, Karen returned home confused and irritated. She opened her phone. There were hundreds of messages, notifications, and voicemails. She opened her social media. Thousands of angry comments. "You should be ashamed. How dare you speak to her like that? We all saw who you really are. You insulted Michelle Obama?" Karen dropped her phone. For the first time, she felt afraid. Karen talks to herself. She stood in front of the mirror and muttered, "It was just a comment. Just a stupid mistake. Why is everyone so angry?" But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. In the mirror, she didn't see a confident woman anymore. She saw someone who had been exposed, and deep down, she knew it wasn't just a mistake. It was her attitude, her tone, the way she looked at that woman with judgment, not kindness. Michelle's silence speaks while the world talked about Karen. Michelle Obama said nothing. No tweet, no post, no interview. But that silence made people respect her even more. A comment went viral. Michelle didn't need to say anything. Her calm silence said everything. The restaurant frame back at La Veranda, the owner printed a photo from the security camera. It showed Michelle Obama, standing in her coat, with sunlight behind her. Underneath, it placed a plaque, "To those who rise above hate with dignity, you are always welcome here." They hung it near the entrance, and from that day on, every guest who walked in saw it. What happens next? Karen sat on her couch that night, staring at her phone. A news anchor on TV said, "The identity of the woman who insulted Michelle Obama has been confirmed." Karen turned off the TV. She had never felt more alone. The world now knew her face, her voice, her behavior, and tomorrow, her job, her friends, and her reputation would all change forever. It was the next morning. The sun had risen. But for Karen, the day felt dark. She hadn't slept. She had spent the whole night scrolling through her phone, watching the same video play again and again. Her voice, her face, her insults. Now shown to the entire world, she had never felt so exposed, so hated. The restaurant gets hit. Meanwhile, at La Veranda, the restaurant's phone wouldn't stop ringing. People were furious. How could you let that woman speak like that in your place? You need to issue a public apology to Michelle Obama. Boycott La Veranda until they fix this. The owner, Mr. Lopez, was stunned. He hadn't even known who Michelle was at first. But now, her face was on every news screen in America. He pulled up the security camera footage and watched the incident again. The way Michelle stood quietly, the way Karen yelled, and how the entire restaurant just froze. The manager feels the heat. Thomas, the restaurant manager who had spoken to Michelle, sat in his office. Pale and shaken, he had handled many problems in the past. But this was different. This wasn't just a rude customer or a spilled drink. This was a public disaster, he whispered to himself. She was the First Lady, and we let that happen. He knew what he had to do. An open letter that afternoon, Thomas released an official apology from the restaurant to the Honorable Michelle Obama, and to every guest who believes in respect and dignity. On behalf of La Veranda, I offer my deepest apology for the way you were treated in our restaurant. No person, regardless of race, background, or fame, should ever be spoken to the way you were. You handled the moment with silence and strength. That silence spoke louder than any shout. We are not proud of what happened, but we are committed to making sure it never happens again. Thomas Raymond, General Manager, La Veranda. Within 30 minutes, the letter was shared across the internet. People began to comment, "Now that's how you apologize. I still won't eat there, but at least they owned it. The manager has more class than the customer." Karen reads the apology back at her apartment. Karen sat on her couch in sweatpants scrolling. She saw the apology. She read it twice, and something inside her snapped. I was just being honest. She looked like she didn't belong there, but even she didn't believe those words anymore. Deep down, Karen knew. She had judged Michelle Obama without knowing anything about her. She had assumed things. She had opened her mouth too fast, and now the whole country knew it. The news shows the clip again on TV. Another news anchor repeated the story. The former First Lady Michelle Obama was publicly insulted by a woman identified as Karen Watson. They showed the clip. Karen's voice played again. This isn't a public park. Are you sure you're in the right place? Karen covered her ears, but the words still echoed in her head. This wasn't going away. A friend speaks up. Karen's old friend Julia called her. At first, Karen was relieved. Finally, someone who's on my side, she thought. But Julia's voice was cold. Karen, I just saw the video. I'm sorry, but what were you thinking? Karen got defensive. She looked out of place. I didn't know it was Michelle Obama. Julia sighed. That's not the point. You didn't know who she was, so you thought she didn't deserve respect. That's who you've become now. Karen went silent. Julia hung up. People began digging by now. Internet users had found Karen's job, her old photos, her LinkedIn. They discovered she was a regional sales manager at a real estate company, and they started tagging her company in every post. Do you support this kind of racism? Your employee just insulted Michelle Obama in public? What are you going to do about it? The pressure was building. Karen opened her email inbox full of hate. Some messages were angry, some were cruel, some were just disappointed. You could have just shown kindness. Karen thinks back. She stared out the window, and slowly, her thoughts drifted back to that moment. To Michelle sitting quietly, to her own loud voice, to the waiter who looked so uncomfortable, to the silence that followed her words. Karen whispered to herself, why did I do that? A private letter sent later that night. Thomas, the restaurant manager, sent a personal letter to Michelle Obama's team. It wasn't for the press, it wasn't for the world. It was just from one man, to a woman who didn't deserve the moment she was given. Dear Mrs. Obama, I was there when it happened, and I failed you. I should have stopped it sooner. I should have stepped in louder. But I froze, like many of us did. You didn't just walk out of our restaurant, you walked out with more dignity than I've ever seen. You taught us a lesson we didn't even know we needed, and for that, thank you. Michelle didn't reply, but she didn't have to. Her silence had already shaken the country. What happens next? Karen didn't know it yet, but her job was already holding a meeting. Her face was already attached to something ugly, and Michelle was about to speak, not with anger, but with something more powerful. Gray stopped by the next morning. The story wasn't just on social media, it had reached every major news channel. Michelle Obama's name was on every headline, but so was Karen Watson's. The clip of Karen yelling at Michelle now had over 8 million views, and it was still spreading. The headlines roared, former First Lady insulted at upscale restaurant, Michelle Obama walks away with grace. Internet reacts with fury. Karen Watson's racist rant, caught on camera. Karen's name became a symbol overnight, and not a good one. TV anchors debated the incident. Podcasters talked about racial profiling. Even talk show hosts made jokes at her expense. But for Karen, none of this was funny. Karen tries to hide. Karen stayed locked inside her apartment. She turned off her phone, but it didn't help. Reporters stood outside her building. Neighbors whispered in the hallway. Even the grocery delivery guy stared at her longer than usual. She kept the blinds shut. She didn't even go on her balcony. She felt like the whole world was watching and judging. The company responds. Karen's workplace, Metro Realty Group, was now under attack too. Angry messages filled their company page. Why do you employ racists? Fire Karen, or we boycott your business. This woman doesn't represent your values, does she? The CEO, Mr. Daniels, couldn't stay silent any longer. He released a public statement. Metro Realty stands for respect, fairness, and equality. The views and actions of Karen Watson do not reflect our company values. We are reviewing the matter seriously and taking immediate action. Within hours, Karen got a short email. Your employment with Metro Realty Group has been terminated effective immediately. Just like that, her job was gone. Karen feels the collapse. Karen stared at the email on her laptop. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she just sat there. In silence, the same silence she once mocked when Michelle didn't respond to her insults. And now, silence was all Karen had. Online voices speak loud everywhere on the internet. People continued sharing their thoughts. A mother wrote, I showed the video to my daughter. She cried. She asked, why did that lady hate her for nothing? A teacher tweeted, we're using this moment to talk about respect in class today. Thank you, Michelle, for being a role model. A celebrity posted, Michelle Obama, once again, teaches us how to rise above hate. We don't deserve her grace. Support for Michelle grows even. Though Michelle Obama had said nothing publicly, millions of people stood by her. They shared her books, her speeches, her quotes. One quote went viral again. When they go low, we go high. People began reposting the video of the restaurant with that quote under it. Michelle's strength reminded people of what real leadership looks like. Children react to a video went viral of a 9-year-old black girl crying as she watched the clip. Why would someone treat her like that? The girl asked. Her mom hugged her and said, because some people still judge others by their skin. But don't let that stop you from being proud of who you are. That short clip reached millions. People around the world began sharing their own stories of discrimination. It wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel less than. The restaurant changes at La Veranda. The mood had shifted to Dot. The staff was quiet but serious. They added new training for every employee on respect, diversity, and customer treatment. They put up a framed photo of Michelle by the entrance. Below it, a sign read, "Everyone belongs here." Karen's past reserface. People began digging deeper into Karen's online past. Old Facebook comments, inappropriate jokes, photos at events where she said questionable things, all of it resurfaced. It became clear. This wasn't her first moment of judgment, it was just the first time she was caught. Alone with her thoughts, Karen sat at her dining table, the same table where she used to host parties. Now it was empty. No friends, no visitors, no phone calls. She opened her journal. "Joe," she wrote, "I don't even know who I am anymore. One moment destroyed my entire life, but maybe that moment just showed the world who I really was." She closed the book. Still no word from Michelle. Meanwhile, Michelle Obama continued her life quietly. She visited a school. She met with a women's rights group. She had dinner with her family. Reporters tried to ask her about the incident. She simply smiled and said nothing. Her silence became her message. "She doesn't need to speak," one reporter said. "She already showed us everything we needed to see," and how she walked away. A voice breaks through. A little girl named Maya wrote a letter to Michelle Obama. It was simple, just a few words. "Dear Michelle." Karen had never felt more alone in her life. It had only been 3 days since the restaurant incident, but her world had changed completely. Her phone had stopped ringing. Her emails were filled with hate. Her job was gone. Her friends silent. The woman who once walked with confidence now walked in fear. The building is silent. Karen lived in a nice apartment complex. Before, neighbors greeted her with smiles and waves. Now they looked away. One man held the elevator door until he saw it was her. Then he let it close. Another neighbor posted a note on the building board. "We must do better. Racism has no home here." She knew it was about her. Messages that hurt. Karen opened her inbox. One message stood out. "You deserve everything you're getting. I hope you feel what we've felt for years." She stared at it. She had always told herself she wasn't racist. She said she didn't see color. But now, the truth was clear. She had judged a woman not by her actions, not by her words, but by her skin and appearance. And now, she was being judged too. A picture that haunts her, the photo from the restaurant, had gone viral. It showed Michelle standing up, calm and composed. Behind her, Karen's face was caught mid-shout. That picture was now a meme, a symbol. People called her the red-lipped racist. Every time she saw it, her stomach twisted. It didn't just show her mistake. It showed the worst version of herself. Flashbacks and regret. Karen lay in bed and remembered her own childhood. She remembered the first time she made fun of a girl for talking different. The first time her father told her not to trust people like them. The way she laughed at jokes that weren't funny but cruel. And now she realized, this didn't start at that restaurant. This started a long time ago. A chance encounter. Karen hadn't left the house in days. But on the 4th morning, she decided to walk to a small coffee shop nearby. No makeup, no jewelry, just sunglasses. And AHOODIE. Inside. The barista glanced at her. Her heart dropped. Did he recognize her? He handed her the drink without a word. But as she turned to leave, he said quietly, "I saw the video." Karen froze. I didn't mean for it to happen like that," she whispered. The barista looked her in the eyes and said, "Meaning doesn't matter. You hurt someone. The job market is closed." Karen tried applying for new jobs. She updated her resume, changed her profile photo, but every company Googled her name, and every company found the video. One HR manager replied honestly, "We're looking for someone who can represent our values in public." Karen wanted to scream, "I'm not that person anymore." But how could she prove that? A quiet decision that night. She sat by the window. Outside, a group of kids played in the courtyard. One girl, about 10 years old, laughed and spun in circles. She had dark skin, bright eyes, pure joy. Karen felt tears form in her eyes. What if someone made her feel like I made Michelle feel? What if I had said those words to her? For the first time, Karen stopped thinking about herself and started thinking about others. She begins to write. She pulled out a notebook and began writing, not a tweet, not an email, not an excuse, just her thoughts. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to understand. I didn't just insult Michelle Obama. I insulted every person who's ever been judged unfairly. I see that now, and I wish I could say sorry in person." She paused, and then wrote one more line. "Maybe it's time I do." A plan is born. Karen searched online. Michelle Obama speaking events, book signing near me, community town halls, and she found one. Michelle would be speaking in 2 weeks, just one town over. Karen's hands shook. Could she go? Would she be allowed in? Would Michelle even want to see her? She didn't know the answer, but she knew one thing. She had to try. A letter she might never send. Karen wrote a letter by hand. "Dear Mrs. Obama, I know you remember me. I wish you didn't. I was the woman in the restaurant. The one who judged you, insulted you, and humiliated you in front of others. There is no excuse, only shame. I have lost everything since then, job, friends, respect. But I now understand what I never did before. You showed more strength in silence than I've ever shown in my whole life. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I just want to say I'm sorry. Truly, Karen. Watson. She folded it, tucked it into an envelope, and placed it on her table. She didn't know if she'd give it to Michelle, but writing it made her feel human again. What happens next? The world had already made its judgment, but Karen had one more choice to make. Would she run from her shame, or face the woman she hurt and take her first step toward healing? The stage was being set, the event was near, and Karen was about to step into the spotlight again. 2 weeks had passed since the restaurant incident. The world had changed, at least for Karen Watson. But Michelle Obama, she had continued with her life, with the same quiet power that had always made her different. No angry tweets, no interviews, no public attack on Karen. People waited for her to speak, but Michelle remained silent, and that silence said more than any speech ever could. A woman of grace while news channels screamed. Michelle smiled during school visits, she hugged teachers, she listened to students, she spoke at small community events about kindness, unity, and forgiveness, and never once did she mention Karen. Not by name, not even as that woman, because Michelle wasn't looking for revenge. She was looking forward. An invitation goes out one day. Michelle's team announced a new speaking event, Women of Change, a town hall with Michelle Obama. Date, this Saturday. Location, Baltimore. Community Center. Wasn't a big event, only a few hundred people, no red carpet, no security wall. It was for everyday people, especially women, who wanted to make a difference. Karen saw the flyer online. Her hands shook. This was it. This was her chance. The letter in her pocket. Saturday morning, Karen dressed simply, a plain shirt, no makeup, no attention-grabbing colors. She looked at herself in the mirror. Not the old Karen, not the loud, proud woman from the restaurant, just someone trying to start again. She took the handwritten apology letter, folded it gently, and placed it in her pocket. Then, she walked out the door, toward something she never thought she'd face, the woman she once humiliated. The event begins. The Baltimore Community Center was full. Women from different backgrounds sat in rows. Young girls with notebooks, elderly women with tears in their eyes, single mothers, college students, teachers, nurses. Everyone was here to hear Michelle Obama speak. And when she entered the room, the entire place stood up in silent respect. No music, no flashing lights. Just Michelle. Calm, smiling, warm. Michelle takes the stage. She greeted the crowd with her usual charm. It's good to be in a room full of women who know the power of kindness. The audience clapped. She told stories of her childhood, talked about growing up on the south side of Chicago, about how people told her she'd never be enough, and how she proved them wrong, not with hate, but with grace. Karen in the crowd. Karen sat near the back, her heart pounding. She didn't clap. She didn't cheer. She just listened. Every word Michelle spoke felt like a mirror, like Michelle was talking directly to her, without even knowing it. When someone shows you who they are, Michelle said, you can choose to hate them, or help them change. Karen's eyes filled with tears. She tries to leave after the speech. People lined up to take photos and shake hands. Karen stood at the back of the room, frozen. She held the letter in her hand tightly, but she was scared. What if she doesn't accept it? What if she tells me to leave? What if I just make it worse? She turned toward the exit, but then, someone tapped her shoulder. The security guard notices Hera. Gentle voice said, "Are you okay, ma'am?" It was a female security guard. Karen nodded quickly. Yes, I was just leaving. But the guard looked at the paper in her hand. Are you here to give her something? Karen froze. Then slowly said, yes, but maybe I shouldn't. The guard gave a small smile. She reads every letter, doesn't matter who it's from. Karen nodded. And gave the folded note to the guard. The letter is delivered backstage. After the event, Michelle sat in a quiet room, sipping tea. Her assistant brought in a stack of fan mail and notes. She read each one slowly, with care. When she opened Karen's note, she paused. She didn't speak, she just read. Then, she closed her eyes for a moment, and whispered, she came. Michelle's private moment. Michelle didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed in deeply, and let it go. This was not the first time someone had judged her. It wouldn't be the last, but it was rare, very rare, that the person who judged her came back to say sorry. She folded the letter carefully, and placed it in her purse, not to throw away, but to keep. Karen walks alone outside. Karen sat on a bench near the parking lot. She had handed the letter over, but she still felt broken. She didn't expect forgiveness. She didn't expect anything. And then, her phone buzzed. A message appears. It was a message from a private number. She got the letter. She read it. Thank you for having the courage to show up. Karen gasped softly. It wasn't from Michelle, but someone close enough to know. Her hands shook. She wasn't healed. She wasn't redeemed. But she had done the one thing most people never do. She faced the person she wronged, and she said sorry. What happens next? Michelle walked out of the building quietly, no reporters, no flashing lights, just a strong woman, carrying a folded letter in her purse, and a quiet peace in her heart. Karen walked in the opposite direction. No cameras, no attention, just a woman who had taken her first real step toward change. It had been one day since Karen Watson handed her apology letter to Michelle Obama's team. She hadn't slept well that night, but this time it wasn't because of shame, it was something else. Relief. For the first time in weeks, she felt like, maybe, just maybe, she had taken a step forward. A new post appears the next morning. Karen opened her phone, still expecting hate, but something was different. On a popular blog, she saw this headline: "The woman who insulted Michelle Obama just did something unexpected." Karen's eyes widened. The article said, sources confirm that Karen Watson attended Michelle Obama's community event yesterday. She did not speak. She did not defend herself. But she came with a letter in hand, and quietly handed it to security. It ended with a single line: "Maybe this is how healing begins." The internet reacts again. People online were divided. Some were angry. Too late? She doesn't deserve to be forgiven. A letter won't fix racism, but others were thoughtful at least. She showed up. Most people never even try. This is the first time someone like her didn't hide behind excuses. The story spread. Hashtags started trending again. Hashtag Grace like Michelle. Hashtag Change is possible. Hashtag Karen apologizes. Teachers use the moment in schools across the country. Teachers brought up the story in class. One high school teacher asked, "Do people deserve a second chance after doing something wrong?" A quiet student raised her hand and said, "Only if they're brave enough to admit it. That's the hard part." Another added, "Michelle didn't attack her. She stayed calm. That's why her silence was so powerful." A podcast discusses Iton, a popular morning podcast. Two hosts debated the situation. Host 1, "You think a letter is enough? She humiliated the First Lady." Host 2, "But how many people do you know who actually apologize like that? Face to face?" Host 1, "True, she could have just hidden, but she didn't." Host 2, "Exactly, that says something." They ended the show with, "We can't erase the past, but sometimes, we can rewrite the ending." Karen gets an email. Karen sat at her kitchen table, sipping cold coffee. Her inbox was still full, but this time, not just with hate. One email stood out. It read, "Subject, from a stranger who saw your letter. Hi Karen, I was at the Michelle Obama event. I saw you in the back. I saw the fear in your eyes, but I also saw something else. Courage. I don't know you, and I don't know your whole story, but I saw a woman trying to change. Thank you for doing the hard thing. I hope others learn from you. Jasmine R. Karen felt her throat tighten. For the first time in weeks, a tear ran down her face, not from shame, but from hope. Michelle's assistant speaks later that day. Michelle's personal assistant was interviewed on a local news channel. The reporter asked, "Has Michelle said anything about the woman from the restaurant?" The assistant replied gently, "Mrs. Obama doesn't need to say much. She already responded with grace, by choosing silence and peace. But yes, she read the letter. And yes, it meant something to her." The reporter asked, "She'll forgive her?" The assistant smiled. "Mrs. Obama believes in change, always has." Karen walks outside again that evening. Karen left her apartment without sunglasses, without a hoodie, just herself. She walked to the same park she used to visit before all of this. Some people stared. One woman walked past her and muttered, "That's her." Karen felt the old fear rise. But then, a young man nodded and said, "You're still here. Good." She didn't know what he meant, but somehow, it gave her strength. A girl's message goes viral. A young black girl named Naya, age 11, posted a short video on TikTok. In her soft voice, she said, "I watched the video of the lady who was mean to Michelle Obama. Then I saw she said sorry, and that made me feel better. Because if someone like her can change, maybe others can too." The video went viral. Even Michelle Obama's foundation reposted it with the caption, "Lead with kindness, end with change." Karen makes a quiet decision that night. Karen opened her laptop. She didn't look at job sites. She looked up volunteer opportunities. Food banks, youth centers, diversity workshops. She signed up for one. Not to earn forgiveness, not to fix her image, but because she wanted to start doing the right thing. Quietly, Michelle reflects. Michelle sat on her back porch, with a cup of tea. The letter was folded neatly on the table beside her. Barack walked out and sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked. Michelle nodded. "I'm thinking about that woman, the one from the restaurant." Barack raised an eyebrow. "Still," Michelle smiled. "Yes, because she reminded me of something, that even when someone falls low, there's still a path up if they choose it." What happens next? Karen's journey wasn't over. The internet still remembered. The shame still lingered. The healing still hurt, but change had begun. Not with a speech, not with a defense, but with a folded letter. And the decision to walk into a room she didn't deserve to enter, just to say, "I'm sorry." It had been 3 weeks since the restaurant incident. 3 weeks since Karen Watson yelled at someone she didn't recognize. 3 weeks since the world turned against her. 3 weeks since she handed a folded letter to a stranger, hoping Michelle Obama would read it. Karen never expected to hear anything back, and honestly, she was okay with that. A changed life. Her life was quieter now. She volunteered at a local food kitchen twice a week. She started attending community workshops on race and respect. She listened more, talked less. The hate online had slowed. The attention had shifted. But deep inside, Karen knew, I'll never be the same again. An envelope arrives on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. Karen returned home, soaked from the walk. As she grabbed her mail, something caught her eye. A white envelope. No name. No return address. Just a small symbol in gold. Mo. Michelle Obama's initials. Her hand shook. She walked inside, sat down, and carefully opened the envelope. Michelle's handwritten note inside was a small card. Handwritten, no signature. But the handwriting was unmistakable. The same graceful style found in Michelle's books and notes. It read, "Sometimes, it takes a moment of pain to wake up a lifetime of purpose. I read your words, and I believe they were real. None of us are perfect, but what we do after our worst mistake, that's what defines us. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening. Keep walking toward the light." Karen didn't cry right away. She just stared at the words, then slowly pressed the card to her chest. The restaurant makes a move at La Veranda, the restaurant where it all began. Something new was added to the wall, a framed photo, not of the viral incident but of Michelle Obama visiting a school just days after. Below it, a new plaque, "Let every guest be treated with the respect we forgot, and the grace she never did." Staff members who had been embarrassed by what happened finally smiled. Change had reached their kitchen too. A news special goes live that weekend. A popular news show aired a special episode, From Hate to Healing, the Karen who apologized. Karen didn't appear on camera, but the show shared her letter with permission. It showed her working at a food drive. It included clips of people who had changed because of the story. The episode ended with a quote from Michelle, "When someone falls, don't mock them, help them rise." People react one last time online. The episode went viral. And this time, the comments were different. "She took responsibility. That's rare. I hope she keeps going. This is what change looks like. Michelle Obama. What a woman." She forgave without even saying the word. Even those who were still angry admitted, she did more than most people would. A final surprise at the park. A few days later, Karen went for a walk in the park. The same park where she used to avoid eye contact. The same one where people once whispered behind her back. This time she walked with her head up, not proud, but honest. As she passed a bench, a little girl ran up to her. Karen stopped, surprised. "Are you the lady who wrote the letter?" the girl asked softly. Karen blinked. "Yes, I am." The girl smiled and handed her a small drawing. It showed a heart, half dark, half bright. In the middle, the words, "Thank you for changing." Karen looked round. The girl's mother stood a few feet away, watching gently. Karen waved. The woman nodded, not with judgment, but with quiet respect. The final voiceover narrator's perspective as Karen sat on the park bench, holding the drawing in one hand, and Michelle's note in the other. The narrator speaks softly. "Some people fall so hard, they never get back up. Some hide behind pride, excuses, or silence. But then, there are the few who own their mistake. They face the people they hurt, they say sorry, they mean it, and they change." This is not the story of a villain. It's not even just the story of a hero. It's the story of what happens when hate meets grace, and how a single moment can change a life forever.